They walk among us unnoticed, elegant minds, fluent in logic, dripping with intelligence. You know the type. The ones who speak with surgical precision, whose words cut without ever raising their voices. They aren't villains. They don't wear masks. They don't threaten you openly. In fact, they often seem like they're helping, giving advice, asking sharp questions, illuminating flaws. But slowly, quietly, they begin to break something in you. Not your body, not even your mind, directly. They dismantle your confidence, your instinct, your connection to something deeper, your soul. Carl Jung warned us. He knew what intellect could become when it loses its anchor to the unconscious. To Jung, intelligence wasn't the peak of human capacity. It was just one part of a vast psychological system. When isolated, intellect becomes toxic. He called it the spirit of the times, our modern worship of the rationale, the calculable, the efficient. But Jung saw through that mask. He believed there was a deeper truth, one that didn't shout or argue or dominate. A truth that comes from the spirit of the depths. The problem isn't intelligence. The problem is when intelligence pretends to be everything, when reason crowds out feeling, when cleverness replaces wisdom, when the articulate crush the intuitive, when the mind outruns the heart and forgets to look back. Smart people, without knowing it, often train you to distrust your own inner voice. They ask for evidence when you offer instinct. They want clarity when you're in confusion. They demand a thesis before you've even found your question. And because they're persuasive, because their logic is sound, you start believing them. You start editing yourself, trimming away the rough, irrational edges. You suppress the parts of you that don't fit into their frame. But here's the thing, those irrational parts, that's where your power lives. That's your shadow. That's your myth. That's the unconscious trying to speak. Jung believed that healing doesn't come from being right. It comes from being whole. And wholeness includes contradiction. It includes the ugly, the wild, the awkward, the confused. It includes the parts of you that don't speak in perfect sentences, the parts that don't win debates, the parts that know things without knowing how they know them. When we idolize intelligence, we exile these parts. And that's the slow destruction, not a fire, not a collapse, a quiet dismembering of your psyche. You become a person who says what you're supposed to say. You think in ways that will be approved. You lose your weirdness, your instinct, your soul. And the smart people, most of them don't even know they're doing it. They think they're helping. They're sharpening you, refining you, educating you. But refinement, taken too far, is erasure. Carl Jung didn't want us to be smarter. He wanted us to be deeper. Smarter is easy. Deeper requires courage. Because the depths are dark. They don't care about being clever. They're not concerned with being coherent. They're concerned with being true. And that kind of truth, it doesn't come from IQ. It doesn't come from books. It comes from listening, really listening to what's moving inside you. Even if it's irrational. Even if it's ugly. Even if it doesn't make sense. You've probably felt it before. That moment when you're talking to someone brilliant and suddenly you feel small. Not because they meant to shrink you, but because their mind is fast, their arguments are airtight, and their certainty is absolute. You begin to doubt your own thoughts, even the ones that once felt solid. You retreat inward, second-guessing every word, before it leaves your mouth. That's not a conversation. That's a quiet defeat. Carl Jung would have called this the danger of inflated intellect, not just in others, but in ourselves, too. When the intellect dominates, it cuts us off from the soul's terrain. We get sharp, but shallow, analytical, but anxious, educated, but estranged from ourselves. Smart people especially, those unaware of their own shadows, often weaponize logic without meaning to. And those around them, trying to keep up, Slowly begin to trade depth for clarity, intuition for consensus, essence for articulation. You start to censor your dreams before they even form. You stop following hunches. You stop trusting the tension in your gut. You start outsourcing your sense of what's real to someone else's map of the world. The tragedy isn't just that you lose your voice, it's that you start thinking that was growth. Jung believed the soul speaks in symbols, not syllogisms. It doesn't care about what makes sense to others. It cares about what is alive in you, even if it's raw or paradoxical. That's why he worked with myths, dreams, archetypes, not bullet points in lectures. He didn't want people to become better thinkers. He wanted them to become themselves fully, recklessly, and honestly. But we don't reward that. We reward coherence, presentation, professionalism. We cheer for people who can explain themselves clearly, even if what they're saying is dead inside. That's how smart people, with all their polish and precision, become dangerous without meaning to. They model a version of personhood that leaves no room for the sacred mess of becoming. You see it in institutions, in corporate boardrooms, in universities, in politics. Everywhere the same disease, the elevation of the rational over the soulful. The heart gets left behind, not because it's wrong, but because it's inconvenient. Because it speaks in a language that isn't always profitable, productive, or persuasive. And so we adapt. We become fragments of ourselves. We put forward the parts that fit. We silence the ones that don't. Over time, we forget they even existed. And then one day we wake up successful, admired, articulate, and deeply empty. That emptiness, it's not a lack of accomplishment. It's the cry of a self that's been exiled, a self that was buried under layers of should and ought, and that's not logical. Jung called this the shadow, the repressed, forgotten parts of you that still want to live, still want to be heard. The more we idolize intelligence, the more we repress what's messy. And the mess is where the soul lives, not in the pristine answers of the intellect, but in the cracked, uncertain, haunted questions of the heart. And so the real danger of smart people isn't that they're wrong, it's that they're so convincing they can make you forget what's real for you. At some point you have to ask, what are you actually trying to become? A better thinker, a more convincing speaker, or a more whole human being? Carl Jung didn't care about whether you were logical. He cared about whether you were integrated, whether you were in relationship with your own depths. And for that, intelligence alone is not enough. In fact, too much of it unbalanced, ungrounded, can cut you off from the very thing that makes life meaningful, the mystery. We live in a culture that celebrates the clear, the rational, the clean. We fear the ambiguous, the emotional, the irrational. But Jung knew the soul lives in contradiction. It doesn't arrive fully formed. It stumbles. It bleeds. It contradicts itself. And if you've trained yourself to only trust what makes sense, you've already lost touch with it. That's how smart people destroy you, not by attacking you, but by convincing you that your inner wildness is a weakness. They don't have to insult you. All they have to do is stay relentlessly logical, relentlessly composed, relentlessly sure. In response, you suppress your rage, your grief, your longing, your gut. And over time, that suppression becomes your personality. You become someone who's easy to talk to, hard to truly know, and even harder to be. You can't think your way into a soul. You can't analyze your way into authenticity. Jung said it clearly. Your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. No one can do that for you, not even the brilliant ones, especially not them. And so, the way back isn't more intelligence, it's more honesty, more dreams, more descent into what you've avoided. You have to unlearn the need to be impressive. You have to stop arguing and start listening not to others, but to the strange music inside you. It's not a comfortable process. Jung called it individuation, the slow, painful integration of everything. You are not just the good, the bright, the sharp, but the broken, the forgotten, the weird. It means facing your shadow, owning your contradictions, letting go of the mask, even when the mask wins you applause. Smart people often never get here. They're too good at managing their image, too quick to explain, too skilled at evasion disguised as clarity. But you don't have to follow them. You can turn inward. You can embrace the mess. You can trust the parts of you that don't have a 5-point plan. The intellect is a tool, but the soul is a landscape. It needs mystery. It needs ritual. It needs poetry and fire and silence and suffering. None of that fits in a spreadsheet. None of it needs to. Jung didn't give us answers. He gave us a direction, down and in, away from the spotlight, away from the approval of the clever, into the darkness where your forgotten self still waits. So the next time someone smart makes you feel small, pause. Don't argue. Don't retreat. Just ask yourself, are they speaking from wholeness or just from knowledge? And then ask the deeper question, am I? Because the goal was never to win the conversation. The goal was to become someone worth being.